Speak the charm of make, charm of make, charm of make, charm.
There will come a time on the planet Earth when science and technology will be long forgotten. When wizards will rule the world.
This is the Arnemancy Podcast. Join your host, Reverend Eric, and his diverse array of amazing guests in an exploration of tarot, magic, the occult, and the history of Western esotericism. The Arnemancy Podcast exists thanks to the support of generous listeners like you. Please consider supporting this podcast for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/arnemancy. Welcome back to the show. Our guest today is Scott Rassbach. Scott is a bishop in the Apostolic Johannite Church. Bishop Rassbach has a bachelor's degree in English and history from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he prepared a thesis on Philip K. Dick and his works. He holds a licentiate in Sacred Theology from St. Raphael's Seminary, where he has delved into many topics in modern Gnosticism. Bishop Rassbach is an avid student of magical and mystic orders, modern ways of understanding ideas, and the intersection of the traditional and the current. And breaking news, here's an Arnemancy exclusive scoop. Not really, but Scott, Bishop Rassbach, is now Grand Master of the Order of the Sacred Flame, otherwise known as the Friary, which I don't think is some sort of like ancient vampire hunting sect, but we'll get into that later and he can tell us. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Reverend Eric. I appreciate the intro, especially the vampire hunting bit. I'm thinking about that now for a new line of inquiry.
You know, I feel like both of us have sort of passed the prime at which we would have been in peak vampire hunting prowess. But, you know, whatever you can get away with in your order, I think.
I was thinking it would be kind of like the modern game hunters who just go out with the camera and take pictures of the animals. So you'd be like taking pictures of the vampires. And then I remembered vampires don't show up on film. So that causes a problem.
Do you think the vampires might show up in digital cameras? We don't really know.
I don't know. We have a line of inquiry.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's go back to the beginning of your impressive list of accomplishments. You're a bishop in the Apostolic Johannite Church. So, first of all, what is the Apostolic Johannite Church?
We are an esoteric, Gnostic, and Christian church that started in 2001. And comes into the world through the Johannite line of apostolic succession. So we come from St. John.
Which St. John?
St. John the Evangelist, although we do revere St. John the Baptist as well.
Okay.
But St. John the Evangelist is the apostle that gave me my bishop mojo.
Sweet. And he's the one with the really cool gospel that's like in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, okay. Exactly. I love that intro. I'm not a huge Bible nerd, but I've always thought that the beginning of the Gospel of John was really fun.
Yes. And so our tradition found, there was a fellow in France in 1804 by the name of Bernard Raymond Fabre-Palaprat, and he found a different Gospel of John that had some different parts in it. It had some parts missing. It had some different stories in it, had a couple of extra lines, and it was written in Greek. And it was very different than the one that comes out of the Catholic version of the Bible that got translated into Latin and then translated into the vernacular. Mm-hmm. So he founded his church and used that gospel to do it. And we have tracked it down. So that's fun.
So you have a copy of the gospel?
We think we've tracked it down. We think we've tracked it down. We don't have a copy of it yet. We think we know where it came from. There is another historical source that mentions a Greek Gospel of John that is different than the one that is commonly used. And so we found the reference to it. We think we may have found where it is residing, but we're not 100% yet.
Do you think, is this sort of related to something that would have shown up in like the Nag Hammadi texts?
No. I think what we think this is in the 1800s, of course, the Europeans decided to go travel all over the world and picked up stuff and brought it back. We think one of these young French ne'er-do-wells was traveling through Greece and found it at a monastery. and brought it back.
Interesting. But this is still sort of a new development for the church then, right? Because you didn't actually have access to this in 2001.
That is correct. We did not have access to it in 2001. We had access to the story. And then we started trying to track the story down. And we're making progress on it. I'm not going to say we're done. I'm not going to say that we're certain on any of this. I'm just saying it's a work in progress.
So since you have apostolic succession, are you kind of like a liberal Catholic church? Is that sort of the category you would fall into?
We consider ourselves to be under the independent sacramental movement. So that includes the liberal Catholic Church, but it includes a whole bunch of other things as well.
Okay.
There are a bunch of independent Catholic churches that come out of various schisms from the Roman Catholic Church, and the bishops would leave, and they would consecrate other bishops, and those people would go found churches, and then they would consecrate other bishops, and they would found churches. And so this is a tradition of wandering bishops and independent sacramental churches.
Okay, cool.
So like a sacramental church is a church that really likes communion and likes confirmation and holy orders, as opposed to like a Baptist church where all they do is dunk you in the water and then they preach at you. This is more ritualistic.
And isn't there something sort of like there's some sort of separation between like the clergy and the laity in this sort of setup?
There is, and it's very interesting because there are some people who say that it is, and you have to have the ordination to be an intercessor to God. And as Gnostics, we of course believe in direct experience of God. So we walk a fine line in that it's more that the clergy perform certain rituals, but that doesn't mean that they're the only way to access God. It's just that they have particular ways to access the divine. And so that's kind of our thought.
So when it comes to the Gnostic element of it, does the clergy sort of consider themselves a sort of like a guide for the laity to access sort of like Gnostic experience, or is the laity able to access that Gnostic experience without the intercession of the clergy?
I would say yes. You definitely hit the nail right on the head there. We act as a guide. We act as a guide, but upon request. So, I mean, we're not forcing people or saying that they have to deal with us in order to experience the divine, but we're here as a resource and we have a certain amount of experience with it. So when you have your great big vision of the heavens opening up and you're like, what the heck is going on? We can help walk you through that. And we can provide certain techniques and certain answers that may or may not work for you. But at least we're out there saying, hey, we believe that you saw the heavens open up. Now let's figure out why, and let's figure out what it was trying to tell you.
How many bishops does the AJC have?
Currently, we have 4 active bishops. We have 1 retired bishop, and we have a bishop-elect. Our bishop-elect is in Australia, and he will be consecrated this September.
That's pretty exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And that's going to be your second continent then, right? Like you're mostly in North America?
We're mostly in North America, and we have been in Australia for at least 14 years. Mm-hmm. We've had organizations there for 14 years, and I think we've got 4 in Australia right now.
So what does it look like to get ordained in the AJC? Like, what's the path to ordination look like?
Well, the path to ordination is you ask us about your vocation, and if you have one, and you fill out an application and you pay a little fee so that, and it's a paper application and you have to mail it, and we do that on purpose. We could make it electronic. It would be very easy to do, but we don't want it to be easy. This is not something that you can do in a weekend. This is something that we hope is going to be a lifelong commitment. So filling out a piece of paper and mailing it in shouldn't be that big a hurdle.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So then you do that and you have an interview with the bishops, and several people in the clergy will interview you. And then you take and start seminary. And the seminary is a series of online courses of learning where you interact with a mentor, and you do a lot of reading, you do a lot of writing, you do a lot of thinking, and a lot of talking about what Gnosticism means to us, what esotericism means, what Christianity means, and how all of those three things interact in our tradition, and how we present ourselves. As a church, we have a very, very light doctrine for the laity and a lot of detail for the clergy. The clergy are under a lot more weight than the laity are.
And is it sort of a similar corpus of learning as like a Catholic priest would have to do? Like, are you studying Latin and Greek and all that kind of stuff, or what are you sort of spending your... Not right now. We're getting up on scholarship so that we understand the current thinking about Gnosticism. We're reading the Nag Hammadi, of course. We're reading the the Hebrew scriptures. We're reading the New Testament scriptures. And we're looking into the Corpus Hermeticum, which is another of our holy books that you can read from. And we're learning about saints. We're learning about sacramental theology in a Gnostic context. We're learning about sacramental theology in a Christian context so that we can understand where they overlap and where they're different. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff. There's also ethics. There's also the law. There's also courses on, there's a participation requirement. So you have to go somewhere where the service is being celebrated, and then you assist. There's a bunch of things that are involved in it. It can be done very quickly, but a lot of people take some time with it because life intervenes. How many congregations or churches or locations where services happen do you have so far?
Right now, that's a really good question. In Canada, we have 2 that are for public-facing services. We've got one in Alberta and one in Montreal. In the United States, we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 at the moment that are meeting on a regular basis. And then in Australia, we have 3.
Wow. So you've managed to spread pretty well then.
Yes, we started with, I believe it was 3 folks in Ohio, and it has spread since then for a very long time. I am actually second generation because our founder resigned at one point, and our current patriarch is the second patriarch of the church. So as a continuity, that's actually pretty impressive. The independent sacramental movement is not known for having continuity.
When your patriarch is chosen, does he choose a patriarchal name? You know how like when there's a new pope, they always pick like a new name.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and yes, he does. He is Mar Johannes IV. So
how would he be the 4th?
Well, the first one was St. John, the original. The second was Bernard Palaprat, who started the church in France. The third was our founder, James Foster, and he's the 4th.
Okay.
So Mark, and he has made it a desire. He's not made it an edict, or it's not in our bylaws or anything, but it is his desire that anybody who becomes patriarch takes the name Johannes. So it's always John as the head of the church.
Well, I like that. That's kind of cool. It definitely keeps the Johannite bit alive, doesn't it? Exactly.
So all of our bishops take names like that. I am actually Mar Iacomus, which is James.
Iacomus. Okay.
With James, the brother of John.
Wait, I thought James was the brother of Jesus.
Depends who you ask. There's another James, and he might be the brother of Jesus.
Okay. All right. So I know that the AJC has an annual conclave every year because I attended one of them, or I spoke at one of them.
You spoke, and it was a wonderful topic and a wonderful presentation, and I do believe we have it up on our multimedia site, so you guys could check that out.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah. Well, I'll make sure that there's a link to me speaking in the show notes because I know that's what.
There you go.
So your annual conclave is coming up, right?
That is correct. It is coming up. Let me see. It is May 31st to June 2nd. It is totally online, so you can attend from anywhere and be involved. We have some wonderful speakers whom people may have heard of. So I'm going to list off a few. There's Dr. Justin Sledge, who is a Gnostic scholar.
I was just having drinks with him the other night.
Oh, really? Well, there you go.
Yeah.
He is going to be speaking for us.
Sweet.
We have a Dr. Sasha Catrow, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Catrow. It's a British professor, and hoping to... her talk is going to be very interesting. It's about Josephine Peladon and the way of mystical aestheticism. We have Reverend Dr. Siobhan Houston, who's going to be talking about the Gnostic restoration in modern France, and will probably cover Bernard Raymond Fabre-Palaprat, who was mentioned earlier. Yours truly, I'll be speaking about group ritual as a way to feed your spiritual inner light. His Grace, the most Reverend William Bayun, PhD, who is my boss. He's going to be talking about the ecclesia from the Bronze Age to today.
Wait, hold on. I have a question. What do you mean your boss? Isn't your boss the patriarch? Or are there archbishops? Oh,
yes. He's a primate. He's a primate of the United States. Yes, he's a primate.
Okay.
So we have a patriarch, we have a primate, we have archbishops, we have bishops. The thing is that in the sacrament of holy orders, there's only a bishop. The patriarch, the primate, the archbishop, that's all administrative.
Okay.
So it's all just administrative stuff. There's no mystic holiness associated with it. The patriarch is the first among equals kind of thing.
Okay. Got it.
But anyway, we're going to have a bunch of good speakers. We're going to have just a ton of topics about art, about mutual aid, about the modern Gnostic church, divination, Western esotericism, and self-conscious, self-organizing systems, work and labor, or what is it? Work and prayer, ora et labora. We're going to talk about the religious life in theory and practice. So it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of interesting topics, and you get to hear us blather on, and it's great.
That sounds pretty exciting. I'm wondering how can people attend? Is it open to the public, or is it open to registration from anybody?
It is open to the public. I will post you a link. You can put it in the show notes. There's a link to go to, and then you can sign up there. We're going to be using Zoom. The full registration is $100, and you can, if you're go for the full registration, you get access to all the workshops when they're live, and there's a schedule. You also get access to all of the recordings. So we put the recordings out over time for everybody after the conclave's over, but they're all edited and made pretty and all this stuff and released slowly over time. If you pay the registration, you get everything.
Nice.
Students, $50. If you wanted to come to an individual talk, if there's just one thing that interests you and you don't want to pay for the rest of it, you can get that for $25. And if you have a financial difficulty, we can certainly talk about a reduced rate if that's something that you want to do, if you still want to attend. Because, we're a church.
All right, so it's fully online, May 31st to June 2nd, and there will be a link to the registration page in the show notes, and you should tell them that that we sent you.
Yes, exactly.
Bishop Rassbach and
Reverend Eric sent you.
Yes.
Yep, exactly. Bishop Rassbach and Reverend Eric sent you in, and you just absolutely have to hear Dr. Sledge talk about the cunning wisdom of the Valentinian demiurge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who doesn't want to hear about that?
All right, so now I'm really glad that you're able to pitch the conclave. I think that we've given people a pretty good idea of the sort of structure and origins of the Apostolic Johannite Church, and I think probably the thing that anybody who listened to your introduction is really curious about is like, what is the Order of the Sacred Flame, and what does it mean to be Grand Master of it? Like, let's start with what is the Order of the Sacred Flame?
All right, the Order of the Sacred Flame. There will be a link in the show notes to our website there too, but we call the Order of the Sacred Flame an initiatory metasystem and a outer Gnostic and magical order of the Western esoteric tradition. this is
Hold
where
on.
it comes into my main topic, which is the difference between being a solo practitioner and being a member of a group.
Mm-hmm.
I love being a member of a group. I mean, I love being, I could pray to God by myself, but I don't actually get to interact to it unless I'm in church with other people.
Right.
As a magician, I could cast spells all day long, but I don't get better at my craft until I see how it interacts with the world and with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So being a member of an order lets you do that in a very structured way. It's very fun. I really think that you bring your game to another level when you have to deal with people of different esoteric levels of education. My own practice suffers if I'm by myself. But if I'm working with a group of people who know either different things or more things or less things than I do, the interactions just get, for lack of a better term, magical.
Yeah, I totally would agree with that. I have a group that I work with, and it's amazing how much the experience changes, but it's also amazing how much that it can inform your solo work later on. Like you do start to see, I mean, you get ideas on how to do things, but also you get ideas on, how ritual can go smoothly or what can be done to improve ritual and all that kind of stuff. All right, so you said initiatory meta something right at the beginning, and I was kind of like...
Initiatory meta system. Okay.
What does that mean?
All right. So if you take an order like the Golden Dawn, for instance, they're everybody's favorite whipping boy, or the OTO. They have a very particular way that they do things, and they teach it to you step by step, right? So you enter in the 0-0 grade of the Golden Dawn, and you learn how to make the signs, and you learn how to do your LBRP, and you learn how to do this. And then you move on to the next grade once you can prove that you've done all these things, right? Our system is a little different. It's a recognition system. So we don't teach you anything necessarily. We recognize that you have taken the steps that are necessary to make the grade. So let's say you're a root worker who does a lot of stuff with, the long lost friend and does powwow and all this kind of stuff. You come to us and say, look, this is what I've been learning about. And we say, you know what? You're an initiate, and we initiate you into our order. You already are. You're already an initiate. So we recognize that in you. And then you do some learning, and you practice the magic and whatever, and you get to that weird experience that the Thelemites call knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, or you get to some sort of enlightenment first step, a Gnostic epiphany, or something like that. And we say, okay, you've moved from the second degree where you're kind of working your system to the third degree where you have become an adept at your system.
Okay.
So that's the recognition. So we are not in conflict with the magic that anybody else wants to do. What we are is sort of a graduate school where you can take what you've learned and bring it to another level, to work with like-minded people to try and see what is possible beyond what's in the books, to see what's possible beyond what you can do on your own, so that you have ideas to bounce off of people, so that you have people to bounce ideas off of, and people who are not going to say, well, it doesn't fit with our structure, so it doesn't work. It's like, well, if you're doing this, if I was doing this and I work in this mode, this is what I would do. How does that fit into your structure? How do we do that? And we talk about it, and we thesis around it, and we try it, and we get together at lodge, and we cast spells, and we summon things and do stuff and see how it works. So we're trying to move the bar forward as a group.
So then as you're doing that, like, you're saying that you're trying to make sort of a system or an order that's kind of like open to practitioners of every path. How does that influence the way that, however, your order's rituals work? Like, what does that look like?
Well, it's kind of like the way the Apostolic Johannite Church works. Okay. An individual person can do whatever they want, whatever system they want. As a group, we have a system of rituals that we use to recognize that we're working in the group context. So we have an opening and a closing we use that has a particular form, and we have certain rituals that you can use that do certain things that provide, the wonderful space clearing or provide divination techniques or meditation techniques. But you don't have to use them. They're all optional except for the Grand Lodge, which is about governance rather than about magic. And the opening and closing, which kind of bookend the fact that you're doing something that is friary related. Even if whatever's in the middle of it works in an entirely different mode, you're still going to have your opening and closing that's kind of standard. I've used that method several times. I've used the opening of the friary, and then I've done Golden Dawn magic, and then I've closed out the friary method. And it works wonderfully, but I get really good notes, and I get really good. I recognize the fact that I'm doing this as a research project, not necessarily just as personal magic or trying to do some sort of effect by itself. I'm also doing it to report back on it.
With the name like the Friary and the comparison to the Apostolic Johannite Church, does the Order of the Sacred Flame still operate within sort of like a Christian framework of some sort?
Christian, I would say no. It tends to operate in something called the Ogdoadic tradition, which is kind of by the Aurum Solis is the other big Ogdoadic tradition. So a lot of our rituals that are friary specific tend to follow that sort of mode. Our planetary magic follows that sort of mode.
Okay.
But I don't know that I would call it in a Christian mode at all. I mean, we have Sethian Gnostics who have nothing to do with Jesus who are members of the friary. We have Druids who are members of the friary. So it's not as if you have to be Christian in order to join it. You should at least be kind of sympathetic or knowledgeable, because there are definitely, Christian type folks involved as well. But you have to be, they're very tolerant Christian folks if they're doing magic. So, yeah.
Well, I was sort of wondering because, Freemasonry attempts to kind of like remove its Christian influence by making sure that like the prayers and invocations and stuff are sort of genericized, and like, references to Jesus and that kind of stuff are removed.
There are definitely Christian oriented rituals within our materials. There are definitely non-Christian materials or references in our materials. So there's a grab bag. I would say that it is a order that has Christianity into it, but I would not say it is a Christian order.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. What does the structure kind of look like? You were saying earlier that you kind of will recognize people who have already been practicing some sort of spiritual method for a while and be like, okay, you're an initiate. We're going to put you through, I don't know, some sort of recognition ceremony. So then do you have like a system of degrees or grades after that?
Yes, we do. We have a 4-degree system. We have the initiate order, which is the first level where you're like, okay, you understand that there's a magical world and you're starting to interact with it. And we usually tell people that grade is broad. So you should look into everything. Check out the tarot, check out astrology, check out Sumerian magic, check out everything. Just take a look at whatever strikes your fancy. Just go nuts. Read it all. Practice it all. Try it all. It's all good.
Okay.
At some point, you're going to find your tone, right? You're going to hit the right note and you're going to go, this really interests me. I really want to be a druid and I really want to follow a druidic path. So we say, okay, once you've settled on kind of your route, we move you to the 2nd degree, which is a Friar Adeptus Minor, which means that you're going to be working a particular system until such point as you reach adepthood.
Okay.
Adepthood is defined differently in all kinds of systems. So there's not really a criteria on it other than the friar saying, I have reached adepthood. I've been through by 5, 6. I have attained the order of druid. I have met my Gnostic twin. I have whatever it is that you think that adepthood means. and can kind of point to us as to why that is and what experience you've had that matches whatever's in your system that you're working, then we recognize you as an adept. And then if you start to want to turn that back to the friary and say, okay, I want to help other people do what I did, we can recognize you as a master of the temple. And at that point, you become more of an educator rather than just an adept.
Okay.
And then there's also a body of governance that you can get into, and there's the Grand Mastership, which I'm now in. Yay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, achieving Grand Master, were you elected to that position, or did you have to like fight your predecessor with like swords or something? Or
it was more that way. Yes, I had to fight him with swords. Swords of email and words. No, our succession is unclear. I was looking at the bylaws, and it says that the Grand Master serves for life.
Okay.
But it makes no provision for what happens when he retires or dies.
Well, so there must have been a Grand Master before you, right?
Yes, there have been 3 before me.
And what happened to them? Do you know what
they resigned and appointed their successor.
Oh, all right.
But there's nothing in it. It says that the Grand Master is the interpreter of the bylaws. There's nothing in the bylaws that explicitly says how this happens. And so they said, I get to appoint my successor. And they did.
Well, I mean, now that you're Grand Master, you can always be like, okay, from now on, there's a hot dog eating contest, and the initiate who eats the most hot dogs, they're the new Grand Master.
Exactly. I could very well do that. But, I don't think I'm going to mess with success. We've gotten continuity now for several years, so I'm going to just
That's pretty good.
Leave it alone for the moment.
How long has the Order of the Sacred Flame been around?
Since about 2001.
Well, I'm going to make a Batman-level deductive guess that the Order of the Sacred Flame is connected to the Apostolic Johannite Church.
When it began, it was very tightly connected, and you had to have reached a 3rd degree in the friary to be a ordained priest in the AJC when it began.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it was, okay, that I see how that was connected. And now, have they separated a little bit?
They have separated completely. The friary is still has a requirement that the Grand Master of the friary be a bishop in the Apostolic Johannite Church. But that's the only connection at this point. Beyond, there's a lot of crossover of members. And most of the current members of the friary have heard about it through the AJC, because it has been something that we've kept kind of quiet, but we're starting to obviously talk about a little bit more under the new regime.
Under the new regime. So then, was it the retired patriarch? I assume John III, who was Grand Master before you, or maybe 2 Grand Masters before you.
3 grandmasters before me, because Johannes III was the first grandmaster. Johannes IV was the second grandmaster. Mar Thomas was the third, and I'm the 4th.
All right. Well, that's pretty cool. And so do there tend to be chapters of the friary everywhere that there are congregations of the AJC?
No, not quite. There are lodges where you have a 3rd degree, a friar adeptus major, who decides that they want to start one. And so there's one in Canada. There's one in Illinois. There's one in Atlanta. And we have a non-geographic lodge, which meets online.
Okay. And do you feel like are the lodges sort of attracting enough members that they're holding together pretty well? I know that that's a problem for like every esoteric order.
Well, I know that the lodge in Alberta has a very active community, and I know that the Georgia Lodge has an active community because I run that one, and I do it remotely. I mean, I'm in Virginia, but they're in Georgia, so we get together and we're actually on Discord, and we do a Discord meeting and talk about the readings that have to be done and rituals and stuff like that. We try to do a little bit of magic, but I don't know if you know, but trying to do intonations over a Wi-Fi connection is rarely a good plan.
Yes, that's really tough to do.
So we have little get-togethers every now and then so that everybody gets to be in person and gets to do some ritual together. The group in Alberta meets pretty regularly in person and online.
You were talking about sort of doing group magical rituals and stuff, but if you're attracting such a diverse group of practitioners, what is the process, or how do you choose what types of rituals to perform?
Well, we have members who are members of other orders, right? So we have one fellow who's a member of OBOD, the Order of Bards, Obviates and Druids.
Novitiates, yeah.
Yes, Ovitiates or whatever. I'm not sure what that word is. It's an O word, I know. Which I've been looking at as well. It's kind of an interesting group. But they have a Beltane ritual that they do. And so for one of our friary lodges just recently, we had them perform the Beltane ritual for us and kind of talk us through it as like a guided visualization. It was amazing. It was an awesome experience to step into that tradition for a little bit. We're a graduate school. So if a member says, hey, I have this ritual I would like to show you all, and I need your help, you take this role, you take this role, you do this, we learn it and we do it.
Well, that's an interesting approach. I like the fact that you're sort of encouraging open-mindedness and sort of like acceptance of all these other paths. Well, and then at the same time, everybody learns about them, and it's almost kind of like a ritual magic show and tell, sort of.
There certainly could be an aspect of that to it. But like I say, as a graduate school, you're trying to have a thesis. And if your thesis is, I'm just going to work everything in the Golden Dawn and see how it works, that's a perfectly fine thesis. I mean, that works well. So just bring that back and say, what did you do? How did it go? Or you could start trying your own rituals and say, look, I have this idea for mixing Scythian Gnosticism with My Little Pony, and I want to try and do a chaos magic sigilization with these two things and see how it works. And we're like, all right, let's give it a shot. Let's see how your chaos magic flows. So I think that at its best, the friary is built for that sort of exploration and extending our magical attempts as a group. I mean, everybody supports everybody else in trying to develop whatever system they're trying to develop. And even if it's just a personal one, you get better at it when other people take a look at it and give you feedback. And it's definitely a supportive group where we're trying not to say stuff like, that's dumb. We're trying to say, this is a very interesting approach, or you have a certain, you're missing a beat, maybe, you know, you've done a ritual and you missed a beat that would be really effective here, or this little bit would be effective if you can find something in your tradition that would do it. But that kind of feedback is whenever you're doing any kind of creative endeavor, and ritual is definitely a creative endeavor. So
yeah, that's definitely a truth that I wish more practitioners would latch onto. But yeah, that sounds like a really fascinating group. Did you come across the Order of the Sacred Flame before the AJC, or was it the other way around?
It was kind of concurrent. I came across the AJC through a member of the friary, and so I got talked to about both of them kind of at the same time. I actually joined the friary first. I was a disaffected Roman Catholic Lutheran-ish person trying to find a church, and I had joined Freemasonry, and I liked the initiatory style, and they told me there was an initiatory order and a church, and I was like, I'm there, let's try it. And my life has never been the same.
Well, that sounds like a really good story. Yeah, I'm curious about that because, like, when I first met you, which was through Freemasonry in the Pacific Northwest, you mentioned the Apostolic Johannite Church, or you were pretty open about it, and maybe that was because one of your deacons was also a part of the same lodge, so we kind of were, that was maybe something that you were more open to talk about. And also, I guess, the Order of the Sacred Flame being a group of practitioners, I can see how that would be typically more of a private thing. Like, I don't always want to tell people that I'm a
in mixed company
magician. Yeah,
in mixed company, you don't do that so much. But now that there are podcasts that are targeted and stuff like that, I'm all over it.
Yeah. So what's the process for becoming so what do you call the members of the Order of the Sacred? Do you call them friars?
We are friars.
So everybody's a friar.
Everybody's a friar. Even I'm a friar. I'm the Grand Master, but my title is friar.
Nice.
Yep.
And what's so the process for order? I guess we already talked about that, didn't we? We talked about becoming a priest in the AJC.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about how you become a friar. How do you become a friar? So what's the process?
Much like Masonry, you have to find a friar.
And then ask them.
Yes, and then you ask them, and they have to initiate you in person. So there are no internet friar initiations whatsoever. Even though it is a recognition, there is still a magical tie that comes along with it. And so it needs to be done in person, and it needs to be done in a chamber, in private. And there's all kinds of good ritual initiatory stuff that happens.
Well, that sounds like a really cool thing. Congratulations on becoming the Grand Master.
Thank you very much.
That's an accomplishment. You must have been working on that for quite a while.
Yes, I have been ever since before I became a bishop.
So let's go back to the AJC. I've got some questions.
Sure.
So I am not. I've never been part of a Christian church or anything of that nature, and I guess one of my questions is, like, a lot of branches of Christianity are very, they focus a lot on converting people, right? Like Christianity grows by getting converts. Does the AJC do that, or how do members come to the AJC? What are they? Do they tend to be like disillusioned Catholics, or what's the sort of typical path that you've seen?
Well, what I usually do when somebody comes and tells me, they come and tell me they're interested in the AJC. I'm like, have you tried anything else? Are you sure nothing else works for you? Because this is a hard path. A lot of other churches are very focused on the answer. Why are we here? What are we doing? How do we be good? What is evil? These are the questions that churches focus on, right? And they focus on answering those things. We focus on the questions.
Okay.
We keep asking. We are a church of seekers. And so if you're looking for a pat answer, something that will give you comfort, we may not be the place to come to, because we don't answer the questions. You ask, what is God? We say that God is ineffable. Everything that you can say about God is false, including that God is ineffable. So go break your head.
Yeah.
We believe that one of the things that we affirm, one of the things that we say, and is part of our basic thought, is that every being contains the sacred flame. So what does that mean for the guy that you don't like? What does that mean for the creep who's stalking you? What does that mean for these people that just aren't right? What does that mean for animals? Every being has the spark of the divine in it. What does that mean that we eat a cow, or that we eat this or that? And we don't answer that question. That's not our job. Our job is to ask the question. It's your job to answer it. You get the hard work.
Yeah. Okay.
And to do that, we have to promote freedom of thought. So, yes, you could say that killing animals is evil, and I am a vegan, and we have several Johannites who are vegan because they think it's wrong to kill animals. And I'm like, that's great, but you have to be able to accept that I raise animals to eat. That is my job as a bishop. So you, as a vegan, have to be able to accept that that is also a valid path. And they're like, okay.
Now, hold on. Hold on. I have a little question about your your wording there. Like, I don't think that we mentioned this on the show yet, but like you raise sheep. So
I raise.
So when you say
I have a
your
farm,
job is
I raise sheep. So
right, that's
I
really
raise
important
animals to
context.
eat.
You're like, my job as a bishop is.
My job as a bishop is to bring the flock to the slaughter. No.
Yes.
No, my job as a farmer is to bring the sheep to the slaughter. But as a bishop is to guide them into the kingdom of heaven. Wait.
Yes.
Is that just a nicer way of saying the same thing?
There's a lot of knitting in heaven.
Reborn. There's a lot. There's rebirth, right? There's rebirth. You can't be reborn if you don't die first. So, but yes, I raise sheep, and they're fascinating creatures. And when people call certain other people sheep, I think that they're doing a disservice to the animal, because they're actually very, very clever beasts and have minds of their own. Yeah,
for sure.
So freedom of thought is one of those things that we go with, and we're like, you can have your opinion as to how the universe is designed and what deities there are in it and all this stuff. We, as a church, affirm that there are three persons, that there is the parent, there is the child, and there is the breath. There is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There is the Pantocrator, the Logos, and the Pneuma Hagion. There is some trinity of accessible ideas that form the Godhead that allow us to see the divine in all its ineffable glory as best we can. And the mystery of that is one of those things that we affirm. And that's sort of the framework we use for our rituals.
Okay.
You can have whatever framework you want. I mean, you can do whatever you like in your personal spirituality, and you are still welcome, as long as you're able to go, okay, while I'm at the AJC ritual, Father, Son, Holy Ghost is the way to go. But you could do whatever you like in your personal life. And we're not going to say you're wrong.
So then people go through sort of like all that sort of set of sacraments or whatever they are, so they get like baptized and then confirmed or whatever. Like, how does that work? What are the steps?
Baptism is, I am interested in the church and I want to be here and I want to be a member of the church, but I don't know a ton about it. Let's say that you're just somebody who wants to go to the church and be part of it on a very I don't want to say administrative, but a very material level. You want to come to church and you want to do stuff,
casual.
But you don't really
casual level.
Casual level, more than casual, but less than, I want to learn all of the Gnostic names of God that are in the Nag Hammadi. You're just like, hey, I like these prayers. This is cool. I like hanging out with the people. This is great. Baptism is good. That's the ritual you want. You want baptism, or if you've already been baptized, you want to be received.
Okay.
Confirmation is, I am committed to this and I want to help out. So I'm going to donate money. I am going to come help set up. I'm going to come help take things down. I'm going to bring things to the potluck. I'm going to keep in contact with the clergy to see when events are happening and how I can help. So confirmed is a little bit more committed of a person, more involved.
Okay. Holy
Orders is committed. That's where you're like, I am going to run a group. I am going to be somebody that is a light on the hill so that other people know where to go. And that's Holy Orders. And our Holy Orders is open to everybody. All you have to do is the work. If you do the work, you can be ordained. We've had several seminarians who are trans. We've had several that are female. And we've had one woman ordained a priest so far. We've had one woman ordained a deacon, which has been great. And we're continuing on.
Oh, good.
We don't have a female bishop yet, but we're working on it. It takes time. It takes time to get into the flow of it and to understand what we're talking about, because usually what we're talking about is so different than what everybody else is talking about. Because we're asking questions, we're not providing answers. We're not saying, you must do this, you must do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the whole idea behind Gnosticism is you have this knowledge that is revealed to you of the divine. And that's kind of the goal of the church, is to get this divine knowledge and to help make a space and a time that allows you to put away the world and think about this knowledge of the divine and a divine reality. And our ritual is based around making that happen. So we have a weekly ritual. Well, it's a monthly ritual by administrative stuff, but you could do it weekly or daily if you wanted to. And that's the ritual of the Eucharist. Celebration of the Eucharist happens usually once a month in our churches. It could be more frequent or less frequent. But the point of that is to remember that there is no separation between the divine and reality as we see it every day. And it's an explicit reminder that there is no separation between these things, because it's very easy to forget. And especially if you're raised in a Christian context, there's always the creator and the created. And we try to bring out the idea that there's no difference. The creator and the created are the same thing. It's the created trying to understand itself.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Yes. So we come from that ineffable idea that God is both surrounding us and coming through us. The divine is within and without. And that can be really, really hard when you look at the events of the world. It gets much easier when you're in community with the people around you who are talking about the same things. And so you get into this idea that the divine actually is present. And then you try to bring that back out into the rest of the world and make the rest of the world realize there's no reason for you to be killing each other over ideas that are thousands of years old.
Yeah, I mean, that's I feel like anybody who can stop and really think about it would probably agree that there's not really much of a reason for us to be killing each other. Period.
Right. So let's see. I've covered the offices are open. We revere a whole bunch of scriptures. We don't just go with the Christian Bible. We also have
what else do you have?
The Nag Hammadi Library, the Apocrypha.
You mentioned the
the Corpus Hermeticum.
You mentioned.
Yep. So all of those are especially revered in our group, but we have taken readings from Jung. We've taken readings from the writings of various mystical saints like Saint Teresa of Avila or Saint John of the Cross. All of these writings that are inspirational and bring us that much closer to the ideas that we espouse are fodder for our scriptural readings.
Well, both of those groups sound really interesting. It's refreshing to hear people taking that kind of the AJC's approach, from a Christian standpoint, because a lot of, I mean, I know this sounds very judgmental, but a lot of Christian churches don't seem to do a very good job holding up to the message that they're trying to spread in the world. So it sounds like you guys are doing a good job.
They emphasize some very different things than we do.
Yes. Perhaps a little bit too much hatred in some of them.
They emphasize the divisions between people rather than the fact that there's no separation between these things. The saved and the damned is the big one that it always comes across to me in a lot of these Christian churches. And it's like, from a Gnostic point of view, we're all stuck on the same wheel.
So you hold a licentiate in Sacred Theology from St. Raphael's Seminary.
Yeah.
What is St. Raphael's Seminary?
That is how you become a priest in the AJC. That is that is our school for training deacons, priests, and bishops.
Okay. And is it online?
It is mostly done online. Yes. And, but there is a definite, human component to it. Again, because ordinations have to happen in person and rituals have to happen in person. So you get to see clergy at some point in your career. But it starts out very academic. The first year is mostly writing papers and talking to people online.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. So then, well, I mean, this has been a really instructive and informative conversation. I feel like I've learned a whole lot. Can you I know that these links are going to be in the show notes, but a lot of people don't enjoy looking at show notes. I haven't figured out the psychology behind that. But can you maybe tell people where they can find the AJC online? All right. If you're looking for us online and you'd rather hear me spell it out for you, it's at johannite.org, JOHANNITE.org. Excellent. And there will be a link to the conclave on that website. Yes, there will be a link to the conclave on that website. And please, we look forward to seeing you. And the lectures start out very lecture-like, and then they devolve into wonderful back-and-forth discussions towards the end. So please come with your ideas, take notes, ask questions. We love it. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast, for coming on. It's been way too long since we've talked, and this has been an excellent way to catch up. So thanks for sharing all that stuff. Maybe we'll have to check in again in 6 months to see how your Grand Mastership is going, and if you are, ranting mad and or more enlightened. That sounds wonderful, and I look forward to it, and I hope at one of these points I can actually get into some of my weirder conversations, like McClellan or Dick or any of those kinds of things. There's all kinds of... Oh, yeah. This has all been very, very straightforward, and it is nowhere near the level of weirdness that I get to. So I really am hoping later on we can get up there. I honestly didn't know that you'd written a thesis on Philip K. Dick, but I've had a guest on earlier talking, or I guess it was a couple years ago, who talked about Philip K. Dick, and it was a delightful and weird conversation. So we might have to get into that next time. But yeah, we'll definitely see you on the podcast again. And in the meantime, enjoy your new fancy title and all that kind of stuff. So thank you again, Bishop Scott Rassbach. And thank you for having me on here. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. This has been another episode of the Arnemancy Podcast. Thank you for joining me. I have been your host, Reverend Eric. You can find Arnemancy online at arnemancy.com, and you can subscribe to this podcast anywhere podcasts are found. If you like what you hear, please consider supporting the Arnemancy Project for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/Arnemancy.
This is Vanessa Urena, and I'm really excited to announce my new store, Sword and Scythe, where I will be offering magical art, materia, and services beneath Mars and Saturn. You can visit the store at swordandscythe.com and be sure to sign up for the email list to receive early access to new releases.